Step in my dojo, you step in my dojo, you step in my. Welcome to the weekly download. Very, very happy to be here this week because this week is a subject that I think is really going to help a lot of you have a breakthrough. This is a subject that I've been waiting on for a long time. I've been waiting on to deliver. It's something that I find I go through again and again and again with people because it's one of those limiting beliefs that's just necessary to uproot these limiting beliefs and to grow in this particular way to be able to make your best music. This is one of those things that separates people who are just starting out from people who are doing well. And it's one of those things that just makes all the difference. It's one of the first things that I teach people when they come here to train at the dojo. And it's something that is just gonna open up whole other worlds of possibility for you. As a musician, you need to always be questioning your own thinking, and you need to always be questioning your own assumptions, because the secret assumption of perfectionism is that you can't fail unless you try. And if you don't finish a piece of music, no one can really criticize you. Because let's say you're a perfectionist and you've not finished a piece of music, and one of your friends comes over and you're like, hey, check out this piece of music. Your friend will listen to your half-finished song, and one of two things will happen. They'll either say, hey, this is really promising, you're very talented, good for you, in which you get to take all of the praise with none of the risk, because they also might not like it. And if they say, oh, well, I didn't particularly care for this half-finished song of yours, you get to dodge the criticism by saying, oh, it's not done yet. It'll be done. It'll be great when it's done. So then you get none of the criticism. So you get all of the praise and none of the criticism. And that's really the payoff of procrastination. Because when you say, I'm a perfectionist, you're giving yourself that excuse that if anyone doesn't like it, they're wrong. It'll be good when it's done. Once you sign off on it, once you say this is perfect, then everyone will like it and you'll be immune to criticism, right? That's the assumption. That's the assumption of perfectionism. So many of us fall into this trap where we say we're perfectionists and we never actually finish anything. What is it that keeps us from finishing things? Well, we don't want to sound like an amateur, and that's one of those loaded words that if you use the word amateur, you got to be really careful who you use that word around. Because even if someone's music sounds amateur, if you dare to use that word, they will fall apart. It's one of the most toxic words that you can ever receive as a piece of criticism, right? We never want to sound amateur. Okay? So we don't really think about what it is that makes music sound amateur. And I'm going to tell you today about some things that do make music sound amateur. And I want you to know, if you're doing any of these things, that's okay. I did all of these things on my way to getting to where I am now. And nearly everybody I've ever trained has done some of these things. Usually all of these things. But I'm going to highlight some of these things for you, and I'm going to place them in a context of music history. And I think it's going to help you to break through this mental block of trying to make good music, of being a perfectionist and staying in this place where you're either procrastinating or you're making music that sounds amateur. Okay? So don't feel bad if you do any of this stuff. Don't be afraid. Okay? There's no judgment. This is just some stuff. These are some Don't feel bad if you do any of this stuff. Don't be afraid, okay? There's no judgment. This is just some stuff that these are some painful truths that I think are going to make you a better musician if you can grasp them honestly, and if you can take this leap with me, it'll free you from a lot of the fear that is holding you back. Okay, so the main mantra that I want you to take home after this is that bad is good. Doing things imperfectly is actually better than trying to do things perfectly. Actively choosing to do things imperfectly is going to make your music sound better. It's going to make your music feel more creative. It's going to make your music feel more authentic. And it's going to make all of the parts of your music fit together in a more natural way. So we're going to be talking about several different kinds of imperfection today, how to recognize them, how to aim for them, and how to incorporate them into your music. The first one that I want to talk about is imperfect sounds. Okay, I want to talk about using imperfect sounds because, as I'm sure you've seen from all of these sound pack marketing endeavors, there's this idea that sound design is hard, that it should be left to the professionals, and that you must buy sound libraries that are made by professionals if you are to make professional sounding music. That is bullshit. Okay? That's bullshit. If you watch my Composing the Mix workshop, which you should all watch, it's a very important workshop. In the Composing the Mix workshop, I make the point that production is the fusion of three aspects: composition, sound design, and mixing. Composition, sound design, and mixing. If you ignore any one of those three aspects, you will not be able to be a complete producer. Okay? Composition, sound design, and mixing. Many people focus only on composition and never make their own sounds or get a good mix, and they wonder why their music sounds bad. Many people focus only on sound design, but their composition and mixing is not very good. And then there are some people that only do mixing, and they can never create their own music, right? It is only by fusing composition, mixing, and sound design that you become a complete producer. So whenever you see the people saying, hey, you must use commercial sounds, I'm telling you right now, that's wrong. That's the wrong way to look at it. That is a lie that is perpetuated to sell sound packs because it's a huge industry. If you hang out on the Cymatics Instagram, homeboy's always going on about how he makes like $100,000 a month selling people presets and sound packs. That's insane. That's so much money. That's so much money. And that money is built on the back of the lie that you can't make your sounds. So the harm of this lie is not just economical. It also is stopping you from getting your hands dirty with your sounds, right? Because the thing to realize is what sounds good in the context of a folder of samples is a sound that has been maximized in all of the mix dimensions. So what are the mix dimensions to know about? Well, I have a concept that I call the three extremes that I outline in a weekly download called the three extremes. And the three extremes are the edges of the mix. You have the extreme highs defining the top of the mix. You have the extreme edges of the sound, the side signal with the mono removed that is defining the left and right extremities of the mix. And then you have the sub bass at the bottom of what the sound system that can reproduce. And that is basically how big your sonic page is that you can draw on. Okay, so most commercial sound libraries, most of the time, the kick will have tons of sub, it will have tons of width, and it will have tons of highs. It will also usually have a lot of activity in the pain zone. The pain zone is the frequency range at which the human ear is most sensitive. The pain zone is between about 2K and about 4.5K, with the most painful frequencies at 3.5K. And it's been hypothesized that this is because this is the frequency of a baby crying, and that it has been evolutionarily selected for that frequency would be the most sensitive. And this is also the frequency at which most of the articulation of human speech is. If I were to notch out the area between 2 and 4K in this recording, you would be having a lot of trouble hearing what it is that I'm saying and making out the words. Okay, so that's basically where the definition of your sound lives, is in the pain zone. So in a way, that's like,
I feel so great. It's the best decision I made to really take my music skills to the next level. I just feel so much confidence now in the process, and just kind of, writing without having inspiration. Like, when else in my life I thought that would be possible, and now I can sit down and have like 3-4 ideas, 4 drops, because I learned drops paid the bills.
yes.
And I had like 4 awesome drops done in a day, and that's just mind-blowing.
In this recording, you would be having a lot of trouble hearing what it is that I'm saying and making out the words. Okay, so that's basically where the definition of your sound lives, is in the pain zone. So in a way, that's like the fourth extreme. There is also the transient response. A transient is the very, very beginning of a percussive sound. That's where that sound does that sharp 0 to 60. If you look at a drum sound, there'll be a big spike at the beginning, and then it kind of tapers off like a knife shape. That spike where it goes from 0 to full volume, that's the transient. So in a way, that's the fifth extreme. Okay, so if you're going through a folder of kick drums or a folder of snare drums or whatever, usually, because those sounds, that commercial sound library manufacturer wants those sounds to sound better than all of the other kick drums on your hard drive. They want their folder of sounds to be competitive commercially against other sound manufacturers. So their kick drum is going to have as much bass as possible. It's going to have as much width as possible. It's going to have as much highs as possible. It's going to have as much definition in the pain zone as possible. It's going to have as much transient as possible. And the dynamics are going to be bricked. It's going to be maximized. It's going to be as loud as possible, as long as possible. And that is going to mean that is going to sound better when you're comparing it against other kicks from other libraries. And it's going to mean that you have to do almost no processing to maximize that sound in the mix. And you can just plop that kick drum in, not EQ it, not compress it, just have it in there, and it's going to be super loud and super maximized sounding. Now, that's great if you're just starting out. If you're a noob and you're just trying to finish something that sounds like a track so you can start learning to finish the creative process and learn, that's great. But as you progress, you'll notice that all of the sounds in commercial libraries are like this. So when you have a maximized kick with a maximized bass sound that has sub and highs and edges and pain zone, and a maximized snare that has sub and highs and edges and pain zone and transient response, and then a maximized vocal and a maximized lead and a maximized everything, what happens is all of these maximized sounds, all of these sounds that sound so good in the folder, there is no contrast between these sounds. There is no dynamic between those sounds. All of the sounds are trying to take up all of the space all of the time. And then when everything is loud, nothing is loud. When everything is crazy, nothing is crazy. Right? And it's like that old metaphor, like how do you draw a mountain that looks big on a piece of paper of finite size? Right? The only way for you to indicate the size of the mountain is to include trees or a little log cabin or a person standing next to the mountain, right? That internal contrast, the difference between big and small, is what makes something sound big. So when you have all of these commercial maximized sounds together, fighting each other, trying to sound as big as possible, trying to sound as wide as possible, as much highs as possible, as much edges as possible, as much bass as possible, as much transient zone as possible, or as much transient response and as much pain zone as possible, they're all going to get in each other's way, and your mix is not going to sound maximized. Your mix is going to sound cluttered, and it's going to sound like flat. And then the naive thing to do is to try and turn everything up from there. Be like, oh, my kick is not loud enough, I'm going to turn it up. My bass is not loud enough, I'm going to turn it up. My snare is not loud enough, I'm going to turn it up. But the problem is all these sounds are maximized. So in an effort to sound good, they've all been maximized. And when you turn them up, there's nowhere left to go. And it just all starts sounding like distorted and piercing on your ears and shitty and actually bad. So the sum of all of these good sounds is bad, because obsessing with goodness, obsessing with the maximalization in these dimensions is not giving your mix contrast. It's not giving your mix dynamics. It's not giving your mix space, and these sounds are all the same. These sounds are all fighting. So that's the first way that trying to sound good can lead you into error, right? Can lead you into error, because all these commercial sound libraries are not designed to sound good when they're all together on top of each other. They're designed to sound good in competition with other people's libraries that are going for your sound pack dollar. Okay? So, what I want you to understand is a lot of the best music has sounds in it that once you start listening for this are objectively bad. They are not sounds you would ever pick in the context of a sound pack. They're not sounds, if you heard them in an ad on Instagram, you would never buy these sounds, okay? Because they are not maximized, right? So I'm going to give you...
It's like that.